I'm Chris Thomas, and this is Master Class. So here's just a useful, simple technique. It's one I like. You don't have to get crazy with it. It's safe. I cannot give you the energetics because I'm using an extraordinary point together with a regular point. I do know that there's a neurologic connection. So the point that I'm going to use is the mental foramen. So the mental foramen is the hole. A foramen is a hole in your skull out of which comes a nerve. And so the bottom of your skull, there's a big hole called the grand foramen. And then there are a couple other smaller foramen. But everything is underneath, and then the nerves kind of go from there, except for three places. There are three places on the surface of your skull where there's a foramen. They're not huge, but they're there. One is above your eye. It's called the supraorbital foramen. In Chinese, that's known as MHN, we call it MHN6, and the Chinese name is Yu Yao. Then right below the eye is the supraorbital, it's kind of in the prominence of the cheek, suborbital foramen. This is, in acupuncture, it's stomach 2. I think that's Sibe, but I'm not 100%. Stomach 2. Then you go straight down, and there's a hole in the jaw. These are roughly in a straight line with each other, so if you identify the supraorbital foramen, you can kind of just make a straight line. But, everyone's a little bit different. The mental foramen is where the nerve, and the nerve actually comes out of the jaw, and it kind of spreads around, and it's called the mental nerve, not because so it's not mental as in, what are you, mental, dude? So that's a different word. There's two words in Latin. One is mentalum, and the other is mentalis, or something like that, and one means jaw. This is the one that means jaw, okay? So it's just the jaw foramen. If I go like this, see that angle and direction? That is the exact angle and direction for the mental foramen. Perfect, right? Now, obviously, I'm being attacked, I'm being grabbed, it's pulling me in close, so I bring my hands up like this because this covers his arms and controls his arms. I never want my arms inside, I always want them outside, so now I'm controlling it. I have my hands come together this way, so I'm going to touch here on triple warmer 17 and tap here this way. But it's super effective. And by the way, for those of you who do Tai Chi Chuan, the reason I know this technique is because this is single whip. It's the same point combination. Once I saw it in Tai Chi Chuan, I went, oh my goodness, that's the same here in the opening of my kata. So I have two different ways to attack this point. One, I'm a little farther away. One, I'm a little closer. So the Tai Chi has a little more distance. The Isshin Ryu has it's more proximity. So now I've got two different ways to do it. Well, that's cool. You don't need 1,000 points, you need just a handful. Traditionally, they said 108. That was all you needed, 108. Let me show you angle and direction. Mental foramen, angle and direction is this way. So if you imagine where in the center of his neck is where his spine is, I'm going slightly downward, and I'm aiming just so if this was an arrow, it would just clear the spine on the opposite side. So it's a very, very slight angle. So the angle and direction is slightly this way, slightly back, okay? If for example, I hit this point, which is a conception point, conception 24, if I hit this point, I hit it straight back, but with the same downward angle this way, right? Has that same downward angle. So all I've done is I take that same downward angle and I just take it over to this edge this way. Right? And that gives me that little rotation of the head. And you notice how one of the jokes for us is we call it the mental nerve because you feel kind of mental after you've been hit. You're like, because your brain gets a little fuzzy for just a second. I am not moving his skull. No, I'm not shaking his brain around. So this has nothing to do with brain trauma, and there's no micro concussions happening. I'm just barely touching him. By the way, here's the other thing. You notice how each time I do it, I go through it. So I do not do this. That kind of hurt, didn't it?
That hurt.
Right.
That shook.
Yeah.
That shook stuff in it, yeah.
Yeah, that hurt. Yeah. But it didn't have the effect.
No.
Now, watch this. See how I drove it through? I didn't even hit him. I put it on there and I smacked my hand so it went through. It went through.
That was funky.
That's what you need to do with a pressure point. Don't think of hitting the point, think of going through the point, and that's what will make it work. The other hand just touches, kind of hook and touch with your fingers, just kind of hook behind the jaw, almost like you're trying to hold the jaw in place while you smack it. So that's your two-way action, what we call two-way action. All versions of Naihanchi katas have this movement and this movement, and so I was taught early on, those are bookends. And the thing about the bookends is that they're there as your sort of backup. Oh, something screwed up, I do the bookend. And so that's literally what I was told, that whenever a technique doesn't work, you go to here or you go to here. So that means that we do have to spend time on that so that you can always practice. In your practice, you're working on the technique that we're doing, your joint lock, it slips out, you just go to the move. So let's take a look at these two moves in their sort of first basic. This is the most basic meaning of these movements. So if he's got his arms out, I just want to make a distinction for you. We call this inside line. This is outside line, all right? Inside line sucks, outside line good. However, to get to the outside line, you have to get there, right? So you saw, it was really easy for me to be on his inside line, but to get to his outside line, I had to do a lot of work to get there. So that's how that works. So outside line is hard to get to. Inside line is easy to get to. So you're more likely to find yourself on the inside line than the outside line, but inside line is not fun. So here would be classic inside line response. Something comes at me. Whoa, right? I'm inside line. Can you actually see how my body starts to look like I'm doing Naihanchi? Well, what's the next move? Okay. Now, because here's the thing. I'm here. What's the danger? Yeah. So I might try to block that, right? That's not quite as effective as if I can turn his head. See, if we can turn his head in the direction of his punch, that makes it hard for him to punch. Not impossible, but it's difficult. Okay? I can also really turn his head. That also, so in other words, here's a different way to think about that. So he's going to punch me, and I push his head that way. See, I'm folding his head. Instead of turning his head, I fold his head. This also makes it harder for him to get that punch. Here's another way to make it difficult for him to punch me. He goes to punch me. I pull on this side. What that tends to do is that tends to jerk this shoulder, which pushes that shoulder back. So these are all the mechanics that go along with that. All right, so I go here. Oh, crap. Ah. By the way, did you see what I did there? Look where my elbow is. I actually caught his punch just above my elbow while I was hitting him in the neck. So that's another piece. So if I look at it here and I go, he's punching me, this is a natural reaction, right? Oh, look. So the very motion of striking puts something in the way of him. So this doesn't, I mean, you look at this, and this is not a sophisticated technique. We're not going, and I'm going to grab this point, and I'm going to grab this. This is a technique, okay? But if you don't tense up, if you tense up, it kind of hurts. But if you relax, then it's a lot more effective. Inside line 1, 2. This is just the basic practice. You kind of do that, and then you take one from the other side.
Sorry.
Yeah. So notice in each case I'm doing we call this a hand pass. But another way to think about it is opening move of Naihanchi. Right? Just skip the cross step. You go right from here to here. Think of it that way, and you're fine. So comes in, whoa, bam. And you just step in and strike. You can strike anywhere up here. I personally love to hit kind of in the middle of my forearm. So here's a distinction between Isshin style and other styles. So this is this would be Rikyu Kempo. See, it's got kind of a 45 angle. Isshin, we turn it a little more like this, like this. That just tells me a little something about the direction I'm hitting. So if I'm doing Rikyu Kempo, this is my impact looks like this. If I'm hitting with Isshin, I'm having a,
Oh.
do you see that downward direction to the hit? So I went into the point, large intestine 18, and then I pulled down on the point. So I used the rotation of my arm to drag the point down to stretch it. Yeah, and I'm stretching it away from the top, so I'm driving energy down, and neurologically I'm driving everything down. That really hurt, didn't it?
Yeah, that was a good one.
Thanks for watching. Now go train.